Germany is taking part in a new NATO operation to beef up its presence in the Baltic Sea. It follows several incidents of damage to undersea cables and other infrastructure. Since 2023, there have been numerous occasions where telecommunications, electricity or fuel links have been disrupted between Sweden, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania and Germany. DW's Giulia Saudelli was on board the first German vessel taking part in the NATO operation as it set off into the Baltic Sea from the northern German coast.
The crew of this German warship are preparing for a new mission. They're being deployed at short notice as part of a new NATO operation called Baltic Sentry. For the next 8 weeks, the vessel with its crew of around 60 will patrol the Baltic Sea. Their aim is to deter and confront any threats to critical underwater infrastructure, such as data cables and gas pipelines.
We are now sailing to the deployment zone, where we will contribute to deterrence by monitoring the sea area with our sensors, like our radar, our optical sensors, such as cameras, and of course with binoculars, which are still important. We will observe the merchant ships that pass by, we will take a look at other warships that are sailing around, and we will paint a picture of the situation and share it with our allies.
The mission comes after a series of incidents in recent months where undersea cables were ruptured, often after ships, such as this one, which were traveling to or from Russia, dragged their anchors on the seabed. Some in the region feared the damage could have been caused deliberately, although it has yet to be established whether these were acts of sabotage by Russia or the result of negligence. But NATO countries want to keep a closer eye on the region regardless.
I wouldn't say the situation is exceptionally tense, but we have noticed that NATO's ability to respond and the security of the sea route in the Baltic Sea are under threat, and that there are repeated incidents where the authorship is not entirely clear.
This operations control room is the beating heart of the ship and of its mission. All the data collected on the Magdeburg surveillance deployment is put together here.
Where the most important ferry routes run, where the most important traffic junctions are, so that we know the area here on our doorstep and can detect any anomalies or abnormalities.
For the countries involved in the operation, like Germany, knowledge is power. They hope to find out more about what has been taking place in the Baltic Sea. And they believe showing a stronger presence in the region can help prevent further incidents from happening.
Well, for more of this, let's bring in Elisabeth Braw. She's with the Atlantic Council and joins us from Washington. Elisabeth, how far do you think the NATO mission Baltic Sentry can actually go to secure critical underwater infrastructure?
Well, it's certainly better having the vessels there patrolling the Baltic Sea than it is not having them. And they are a visible sign that NATO is taking these suspicious cable cuts seriously. But NATO is also making a big gamble. NATO and the Joint Expeditionary Force, which is a group of Nordic, Baltic countries and the UK with a similar initiative, they are essentially committing themselves to a significant gamble because they are hoping that monitoring, showing that presence in the Baltic Sea will deter whoever it is that is up to nothing good. But the question is what happens if these suspicious cable cuts continue?
Yeah, what kind of mandate do they have? Can they just monitor or can they do something against these things actually happening?
They can. At the moment, their mandate does not include any action. So they are there to monitor, they are there to report suspicious behavior, but we don't know what NATO would decide to do if these vessels were to report significantly suspicious activity. And because in that case, somebody would have to intervene, namely NATO would have to intervene. And the question is, do you as NATO, which is a military defensive alliance, do you intervene with your tools against a merchant vessel that appears to be in the process of harming an undersea cable?
Now, NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte has declined to provide ship numbers for this operation. Do we know what sort of NATO presence we're talking about there in the Baltic?
It's a relatively small presence, so it's a symbolic presence by NATO. It's certainly not any sort of major armada that's sailing around conducting these patrols. But what matters is that it's an organized presence. It's not just a vessel turning up every now and then when a suspicious activity has taken place. It is constant patrolling, and it is a significant signal that NATO is sending. But again, the next step remains to be seen. If there's another cable cut, what will NATO do in that instance? And it is really sort of almost an existential question for NATO, because it is an alliance that responds to military aggression. But what we are seeing in the Baltic Sea are suspicious cable cuts that are thought to have been perpetrated by merchant vessels. These are not military attacks.
Now, also, as part of this mission, NATO leaders have pledged a host of other measures, including beginning to, quote, deploy innovative solutions and step up information sharing. What does that mean?
It sounds very boring, does it not? Step up information sharing, and it is a standard response whenever something needs to be done. Oh, we need to increase information sharing, and increasing information sharing is always a good thing. You can't go wrong with that. But what they are clearly intent on doing is having as much as information as possible available to everybody who can contribute in any way to making to preventing cable cuts in the Baltic Sea. But what I would flag up, as it were, is the role of the private sector. So we have on any given day hundreds of merchant vessels sailing through the Baltic Sea. They could be a source of information too. They see things when they sail through. They may see when a vessel, a fellowship, acts suspiciously. Is there a way for them, will there be a way for them to feed that information into NATO, to have a designated point of contact or phone number or email address to contact when there is something when they spot something suspicious? And I hope that will happen. At the moment, it's only ad hoc, but I hope NATO will make a systematic effort in that area too, because these vessels can be a formidable or considerable source of information for NATO.
Elisabeth Braw there. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you.
Giulia Saudelli, who filed that report, joins me on the line now. Giulia, tell us more about this NATO mission that Germany is a part of. Which other countries are involved, for instance?
Yeah, so this mission was launched mid-January by Secretary General of NATO and the NATO allies that look onto the Baltic Sea, so from Germany to Sweden and Finland to Latvia, Estonia and Lithuania, Poland, Sweden, and these are all countries that have a direct involvement in the Baltic Sea because they are so close to it, and they are countries that committed to putting forward their own resources to contribute to this surveillance and deterrence mission. That's why the German warship that we were on is part of this mission, and the other countries are also contributing different kinds of ships and airplanes to monitor the Baltic Sea. And this mission is going to be coordinated by also a relatively new task force that is based in Rostock in northern Germany, from the city from which we set sail on the warship Magdeburg. And the important aim of this mission is to gather and share among allies a big amount of data concerning sea routes, concerning important traffic junctions in the Baltic Sea, but also monitoring any suspicious activity. It could be ships that aren't signaling their presence. It could be ships that are taking curious routes, zigzagging in the sea. And these are all things that the allies are going to share and try to paint a picture of what exactly is going on in the Baltic Sea.
And while you were on board this ship, did the crew notice any suspicious activity in the water?
Yeah, so I and my colleague Henning Ott, who filmed those nice pictures that we saw, we were on the ship on its first day of deployment. We set sail with the ship from the military port out into sea. So the crew hadn't yet been able to actually experience what they are going to see in the Baltic Sea. Now, the deployment for the Magdeburg is meant to last for 8 weeks. And we heard from the captain of the ship that he expects to see all sorts of different activity. He expects to see Russian Navy ships navigating across the Baltic Sea, as is their right to do, and as they do, they expect to see merchant ships navigating around, and if they see anything that raises suspicion, they're going to take a closer look at it. Now, the Magdeburg is equipped with weaponry. It is all defensive weaponry that is meant to only be used in case they are attacked, but they're going out there to basically keep an eye out, collect data, and share it with their partners.
And it's a very large area we're talking about, right? I mean, although other countries are involved, will the number of surveillance ships involved be enough to avoid potential sabotage?
This is something that we're going to have to see, and it's also important to point out that, yes, deterrence is an element of this mission, and yes, NATO allies hope to also be sending a signal and showing possibly Russia or anyone who is looking to possibly sabotage essential infrastructure in the region that they are there, they are watching, and that they know what is going on. But on the other hand, I would say that also the surveillance aspect, the data collection aspect is as important as the deterrence one in this mission. It is important for the allies to actually coordinate and paint a clearer picture of what is going on, and then possibly with that information they can adjust their mission and consider any possible further steps.
We'll leave it there for the moment, but thanks so much for joining us today. DW Political Correspondent Giulia Saudelli in Berlin.